Hello again, students. How have you been? It's been a very long time since we have met here on Utopia Parkway in front of Gate 1 to be hit by cars while we talk about speech. Hope you're having a good time. Look out for the hatchback over there. Okay, good. This video is about organization, and I'm going to go over what the textbook talks about in terms of organization. This book here, which I really like, I hope you've been looking at it, reading it. Yours won't have invisible tabs. That's kind of cool. Look at that. Chroma key delights. Chroma key LOL. The textbook has a whole chapter on this, I think. Well, I keep telling people the textbook has a whole chapter on things, and it's just a blatant lie. These things are like woven through the text in such a way that I think that chapter 9, getting it together, arrangement. That's a really important thing, and I'm going to talk about that because arrangement is also kind of like invention. Invention is, how do we come up with what we're going to say in a speech? Where do we go to get the information we need? How do I come up with things that are reasonable to say? And, historically and traditionally, people have looked to things like the audience, the conversations of people around them in the world, the media, what is the news reporting or not reporting, the work of scholars and investigators and thinkers, or what we might call deep journalism or long-form journalism, the writings of significant people who have held office, people who have been in the rooms where big decisions happen about statecraft and other kinds of things, corporate leaders. These are the things that people look at for invention, and they say, how do I know what to talk about here? Well, we often look about what people have talked about before, and we include that. That's a really common way to do it. We also look at what people are saying now, and we invent speeches from that. But another way we can do it is through the process of getting our speech in the right order, we can come up with really cool things to say. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in this video. So I'm going to be typing a little bit here on this blank document. So we have 5 canons of rhetoric. And this is from the ancient world. Invention, arrangement, style, delivery, and memory. Today, we're going to be speaking about arrangement, or what they call dispositio, not despacito, which is the way one of my students pronounced it for a very long time. I hope they're not watching. I'm not really making fun of you. It's just kind of cool can you imagine if Justin Bieber made a rhetoric song? That'd be pretty cool. He made a song about argumentation, but what if he made a song about classical theory of speech making? Dispositio. It doesn't really fit in the song, but maybe he could write another one. He seems like a talented young man. He might be able to do it. I don't know. We're going to talk about arrangement today. Now, let's go over some of these other ones. So invention I already talked about, which is how do you come up with what to say? How do you create the material for the speech? And you guys are already, you sit there and you think, you ask your friends about it, you Google. These are all strategies of invention. Arrangement is what order do you put the things in? And the books suggest a very specific order, but there is debate about what orders are better than other ones. Style. Style is the question of what kind of language do you use? And I don't mean German or Spanish. I mean, what kind of vocabulary are you going to use? Are you going to use a vocabulary that would resonate with people from a particular neighborhood or a particular class, a particular level of education? Sometimes you're in a professional situation, and style requires the use of professional language that means something special to the people in that profession. For example, even a simple word like evidence does not mean the same thing from a group of doctors to a group of lawyers to a group of teachers to a group of parents who are looking after they're worried their teen is into drugs or something. What evidence do you look for? Or even like here in New York City, we have bedbug problems. So you find websites like, what is the evidence of bedbugs? Now, that's a very different kind of question than what is the evidence that supports a murder conviction of a person in a court of law. So even a word like that, depending on where you are, the style, what you use for that has to be accounted for, because you wouldn't want to use the wrong word, because if you use the wrong word with the audience, the reaction is immediate. This person is ignorant and not worth listening to. You don't want that. Once that happens, there's no coming back. You really only have one shot to persuade. So my phone acts up every time I'm recording. Why is that? I'll say to it the wake word and all this stuff to try to get it to do stuff with the vocal assistant. Never responds. And then it sits there and just listens to me for 10 minutes. It's like, I can't help you with that. Well, no, of course you can't. Phones cannot perform any kind of memorable or useful oratory. I mean, not yet. I mean, maybe we'll have AI phones at some point. They'll be able to do it. But we're a far cry from that. Okay, so delivery. Delivery is what I'm doing now. My modulation of my voice, my volume, my gesturing, how to use your body and your voice to get your message across. And when we're doing audio recordings like most of you are doing, the voice is the most important thing because we can't see you. So the use of pauses, the use of emotion behind the voice, it's so incredibly important. It has to be there. And a lot of you got some points taken off because I said you sounded like you were reading a document. Here's a question for you. If you wrote a document about something, why didn't you just email it? Why record a speech about it? Is it because it's a class requirement? Because you can't email it to me? Well, then it's probably not a very good speech. So think about how the voice and the performance of the text makes it different. Why do so many people prefer audiobooks to textbooks, to reading a text? Why is that? You know, for example, there's a big debate in the Harry Potter community about, do I read the Harry Potter book or do I listen to the audiobook? Because the actor who was hired to portray all these different characters came up with his own way of speaking for each character. That's very different from the films and different from what you might imagine in your head, and it's worth it on its own. So he's reading something that people already think is valuable. Why should people pay for his performance? He answered that through his delivery, modulating his voice, conveying emotion, and interpreting the text. That's what oratory is all about. Well, it's about a lot of other things too, but it's also about that. It's several hundred percentages of importance each thing. It's like 1,000% important oratory is, but I might be a little biased. Okay, memory. Memory is the question of how do we remember what we're going to say? Are we going to have notes? Are we going to have a script? Are we going to have something on the screen to help us? I mean, I'm very familiar with this, so I don't have any kind of memory aid right now. I'm just using my actual memory to talk to you about these things. That might not be something you're comfortable with yet, but I guarantee you each one of you probably has an expertise that you could talk about from memory, no problem. You just don't think about it as valuable because you know it. Like, isn't that funny how we discount our own knowledge bases? Like, we're like, oh, well, I know how to do that, but everybody knows how to do that, so it's not worth anything. People do this all the time. Why do we do that? You should be proud of the things you know a lot about. And you should be happy to share them with others in order to improve their lives. Not to, like, dominate them, like, I'm so much smarter than you, you're an idiot. Not like that. Or to prove to them their political beliefs are so dumb and wrong. Not like that. But to add value to their lives through a new perspective and a new way to think. All of us have an expertise, and we're just trained that we're not, oh, no, nobody would ever care about my knowledge on that. No, you can't think that way because that's not how democracy works. Democracy it's not factocracy. It's not truthocracy. It's not scienceocracy. It's democracy, demos, the people. Everyone's perspective and everyone's knowledge has to be shared, or this thing isn't going to work. We're not going to have democracy. We're going to have people like Jeff Bezos in charge. Do we want that? Here comes the new budget, 2-day shipping. Here come the new laws, 2-day shipping. The State of the Union on Amazon Prime. We don't want that. Do we want that? I don't know. Do we? Sounds pretty horrible. So be proud of what you know. And think about ways you can share it with others to improve the condition of your neighborhood, which improves the condition of your society, which improves the condition of your city, which improves the condition of your country, which improves the condition of the world. It's transformative. I forgot how we got off on that, but memory. How do we remember what we're going to say? Because I'm speaking without notes. That's how I got there. Okay, so you can also use note cards. Sometimes you might have a teleprompter. Or sometimes you might just write a few notes on a piece of paper, and I think that's good too. It really depends on what works for you. I've encouraged a lot of you to write down your ideas and then just kind of talk about what you wrote. And you can use that as a reference, but I don't think it's a good idea to read a piece of paper as a speech anytime, really. Okay, so let's get into the actual arrangement things that they talk about in the book. I have to clean I need to clean the chroma key here. It's a little fuzzy, huh? Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm sure all of your other professors are using a really professional chroma key as well, so I don't feel too bad. All right, so let's talk about what the book suggests a good arrangement is. First, Exordium, a fancy word for introduction. What do the ancient thinkers say we should start a speech with? Well, one of the things that you should start a speech with is a palate cleanser, which is something that prepares everyone to listen to you. They're about to taste of your words. They're about to taste of your thoughts. You want to make sure their palate's clear of any other thoughts or anything that they've eaten before they've come to hear you, that they've consumed before they've come to listen to you. So if you go to a wine tasting, they give you a little cracker before you taste the wine. It's meant to wash your mouth out so that you get the full flavor direct of the wine, so you don't misjudge that wine's flavor because it's contaminated with something that's already been in your mouth. So what are some good palate cleansers? Well, some people welcome everybody and thank everybody for coming, but I think the great palate cleanser is to get right into it with a question, a statement of what you're going to be doing, or something everyone might be wondering about that's on their minds. One of the palate cleansers I did once is I was introducing a debate, a public debate among some students, some from the UK, some from St. John's, and it was in Manhattan. And the night that we picked for this debate, which we had scheduled way in advance, happened to be the night that the Pope was going to speak in Central Park. So that's some big competition. Everybody wants to go see Pope Francis, right? He's like a very influential, that's understatement. He's probably one of the most influential people in the world. He is one of the most influential people in the world, if not one of the most influential people in the world. Anything I say about the guy seems to diminish where he actually is in respect. So how am I going to, the crowd showed up, how am I going to introduce this thing to get them to take out of their minds what might be? Well, I decided to use something going on, and so I got up there, they introduced me, and they said, now Dr. Yano will introduce and explain the debate to everyone. So I'm giving a short speech that's setting up a debate. So what did I do? I kind of looked around quietly, and I said, this is a really good Pope overflow crowd. And they see that, immediately gets them kind of relaxed, that's kind of funny. It kind of like wipes out what they're thinking. It's like, oh yeah, this is where we are in the world. This is happening just down the street from us. And it also kind of gets them to think, oh yeah, well, I wasn't going to go to that in the first place, or who could get in or anything like that. So it kind of opened up the sense of why you would want to come to a debate rather than do anything else. And I thought it was a good palate cleanser. Another thing that you have to do in the Exordium is prepare everyone for what they're about to hear. This is Cicero's recommendation. What does this mean? Well, you might be talking about something very technical or very expert-oriented, and you need to prepare them with background or things that you're going to hear. For example, maybe you're speaking about a very important court case. You might need to prepare them for why this case mattered, what it was about, how it's related to other kinds of constitutional issues like it, something like that. You might need to provide some definitions of some important terms. You want to get them in the mood and get them prepped with any kind of detailed or perspective information that you might want them to do. So, for example, if you're speaking about a crime, you might say, what I want is us to think about this and what I'm about to say in the viewpoint of a detective. How does a detective operate? And then you can give them some rules for being an NYPD detective or what good detectives do. You can do that research and provide that. So that might be a way to do it. Or preparing everyone for about their here, if you're talking about your family, kind of maybe a little bit about families and what you think they are and this kind of thing. The next, probably the most important one that you'll remember from your high school English teacher is the thesis. What is your point? What is the point of this speech? What do you hope to accomplish? What is your goal? What do you want us to do? Now, sometimes people will say there's persuasive and informative speeches. I don't think that that's a true thing. I don't think they exist like that. I think there are speeches and people will say, in this speech, I'm going to let you know the arguments that are out there. But at the same time, that's persuasive. Like, you have to be convinced that I'm the person who knows what the arguments are out there about whether you should adopt a dog from a shelter or whether you should buy a dog from a pet store or what. So it's informative and persuasive, even though you might take the position that you're merely informing the audience. Even when governments are like, here are the evacuation routes for the hurricane, implicit in that is the persuasion that you should probably get out of town. Something bad is about to happen. They don't just randomly discuss this. Oh yeah, today we thought we'd talk about evacuation routes. No, nonsense. There's something is about to happen. You might want to be considering changing your normal activities, which would be persuasion. Someone's voice is making you reconsider what to do, and you're going to do something you wouldn't have done on your own. That's persuasion. I think that anytime you give a thesis, you're trying to persuade people. So you're trying to move people, even if it's like to improve understanding. You're trying to get them to accept that their understanding might be limited and that you're the best person to help them advance their understanding. So a thesis is, what's the goal of the speech? What do I hope to accomplish or do? Or what do I hope you would do? Or what do I hope to do? It's kind of the way it might be phrased. Like, today I hope to be able to examine all of the issues surrounding the difficulty with reopening restaurants after COVID-19. Or I hope to explain to you why I think the NCAA basketball teams should model the NBA bubble for the spring season of basketball. That might be important too. All right, so then the other thing that an exordium should do is preview what you're going to do. So the exordium kind of says, here's how I'm going to accomplish that goal. We're going to examine this, we're going to examine this, we're going to examine this. So you're laying out kind of a map of what's going to happen in the course of the speech so that people aren't caught offhand or they're caught flat-footed or caught offhand. Where did that come from? That's kind of stupid. Caught off guard. Maybe that's what I meant to say. Yeah, so caught off guard. You want them to kind of know where you're going to go. Okay? So that's pretty much the exordium, the things you're supposed to do. It's, how do I get people in the mood and the attitude to listen to me? How do I get them to respect me and understand I have something valuable to say? And how do I communicate to them the goal of what I'm speaking about? Okay, so that's a good one. Then, after the exordium comes the narratio. Now, keep in mind that this old way of doing things was mostly meant for court cases, and you might not have a court case, but maybe you should think of every speech you give as kind of making a case for guilt or innocence of something, making a case for why something should be, or why something is important to know about, or why something's important to care about. Most of your speeches will be that way. Let's say that one of the most common speeches you'll give is best man or maid of honor speech, right? At a wedding. What are you there to do? To celebrate. To celebrate this person who you've known a long time who's getting married. Is that a persuasive speech? Probably not in the traditional way, but what you're doing is calling attention to why we're all here and giving your special perspective of why this person is worth so much love and so much caring, and why we all care about them. So everyone in the audience cares about one or the other people who are getting married. Your job is to say, here's a unique perspective on why this person is worthy of so much care and love, and why I'm so happy to celebrate here. And that reinforces, that adds to people's care and love for the person they know, and the person they're getting to know, the person they're marrying. That's probably a speech you're going to have to do at some point. So you think about it like that. I'm adding my unique perspective, which is valuable because I know this person. I'm adding that perspective to this incredibly important day. So narratio is the story or the setup. What do you do in a narratio? This is where you give kind of the background, the information, and everything that is leading up to. Thank you, autocorrect. We used to call that spell checker, didn't we? Or was it always autocorrect? I associate autocorrect with phones. Everything that is leading up to the point you want to discuss. So this is where you would set up everything that they need to know about the speech, all of the different scholars and important people talking about it, all the different information and research you've done, all lined up. And then you get to the point where you're going to offer your thesis and your arguments for it, which is the partitio. And the partitio is where you make your case. Here is the central question that remains after the narratio is complete. So you've kind of set up with a story. So you say, I really want to communicate to you why AI is extremely dangerous and we should divest from AI as quickly as we can. But before we get to that point, ladies and gentlemen, how did we get to the point where we're on the edge of AI? Well, it all starts with the research of this one scientist, Nathaniel McHooterstein, or whoever. That's a really bad name. I thought I was going to come up with a better name than that, but that's what happens when you just open your brain and let it just have access to your voice without any kind of filter. It's a bad idea. You start in the place where you create the story that leads up to that, and all the information. What were the big metrics in the starting points of AI? Where did AI move? What are the big milestones of it, and where are we today? And that raises the question of why we should stop developing this. And then you make your case. Here's the central question that remains after the narratio. And here are the reasons why. You explain yourself. You explain and you make your argument. And then in the next section, confirmatio is where you provide all the evidence. Whoops, we don't want to bold that. All of the evidence, proof, explanation, examples. So think about giving the reasons and say, okay, now on the first reason, the way this would be done by the ancients is they say, if you don't think these reasons are correct or true, let's look at the proof. For my first reason, that AI cannot be controlled. Let's look to some of the things that scientists have said about what AI will be able to do or not do. Are we sure that we could control it? The next reason, AI won't have a conscience. It will see us as flawed programs and try to delete us. It will try to erase us or reprogram us. Here's the evidence of that. My third point, we're not ready for AI. We can barely handle natural intelligence. We don't know how to teach. We don't know how to deal with people. We don't know how to argue. We don't know how to think. We don't know how to make judgments. How are we going to train a computer how to do that well? Or are we just going to replicate the same terrible thinking that we have around the world? Here are the examples. So that's kind of how this would be done in the ancient world. They probably wouldn't be talking about AI, though, but in a court case, they'd be talking about, here's who saw the perpetrator, here's the bloody shirt that the victim was found in, and they throw it down on the floor of the court, and everybody gasps. They were really into, like, visual and physical evidence in the ancient world. We're into that, too, but our physical and material evidence is very different. Like, we're obsessed with DNA. DNA is everything to us. That's what gets you out of a crime. That's what proves you've done it. Everything is we lean on DNA a lot. And DNA is physical evidence, but it's physical evidence that's only available to us through a particular application of technology that the people using the technology disagree about how to do it well. There's disagreement, and we're still learning more about DNA as we go. In the future, I'm sure they're going to make fun of us for our over-reliance on DNA as the perfect evidence, just like we have made fun of other people for thinking this is perfect evidence. This is a sign from the gods or whatever is perfect evidence. They'll make fun of us in 1,000 years about DNA, I guarantee it. Just wait. In 1,000 years from now, you'll call me up and say, wow, look at that. You were so right. And I'll be like, how are we still alive? And I'll be like, shh, don't anger the AI. Don't question the gifts of Amazon. Okay. Refutatio is the next one. Now, this is one that a lot of you guys left out in the first speech, which is understandable because you're just kind of getting your feet wet, getting things, together. Refutatio is where you assume what the audience... Actually, now I think about it, one person did do this. Assume what the audience's objections are and then handle them. You don't want to say, oh, you idiot, I can't believe you'd think this. No. You want to be nice to them. So the way this is often done is say, well, now, thinking people in the audience might have the question, how do we know? Blah, 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 blah. And I will say this, or it could have been this other person who did the crime. And I would say this to that. These are all very good ways to kind of structure the conversation. Say, well, smart people would, and then people in the audience are like, well, I'm a smart person. Of course, that's my question. So you kind of like lead them maybe into the kind of objections they want, but you also should be authentic and straightforward and honest about what the actual objections might be to your case, the actual hard ones, and then deal with them in the speech so that you give them something to think about. You don't want to not answer or not deal with things the audience might have doubts about. You want to include them in the speech. Somebody did this, like I said a minute ago. It was on a sports one. They said, well, what about people who say this team is better, this person's better? Or what about people who make the argument that blah, blah, blah? This is refutatio. This is where you look to it. And one of the ways you can find it is when you're doing your research, you'll find people arguing against the people you're quoting. They'll say, no, they're wrong. This idea is wrong. Blah, 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 blah. And you can use those, say, these are some of the objections that are out there. These might be your objections. Here's what I say to those objections. Here's what I say to people who doubt that. And you'll be in good shape. Very last one. Then we'll be done. Per oration. This is the conclusion. This is where, according to the ancients, you're supposed to invoke strong emotions in favor of your case. So this is where you're supposed to make the last appeal for people to be really angry. In fact, Cicero said the best way to get people going is indignation. I cannot believe. We hear indignation a lot in our political situation, don't we? So people are like, I cannot believe this is happening. I cannot believe this is happening. I am so angry that this is what is being permitted to happen. I cannot believe that we are not doing more about X, Y, and Z. So oftentimes people talk about the government in terms of indignation. And that's been going on my whole life. It's just really, really acute right now where people are really losing their temper about it and punching people and things like that. It's become quite at a boiling point of indignation with the government or with people's political beliefs. So very strong emotions in favor of your case. So indignation is one. Pity is another one. Pity's like, how could we let these poor innocent people suffer? How can we let these poor dogs live in these conditions? And it shows like, on TV, it shows like a dog in a cage and the rain is pouring down. It's playing some super sappy, sad song. And you're like, oh, I need to save that little dog. Oh, and you get really emotional. So those are the two that Cicero says are the best. But those are really good in a legal context. What else might be good emotions to bring up to people? Things about pride, inspiration, feeling part of a community, feeling like their actions and thoughts matter. All day long we hear about other people's actions and thoughts if we watch the TV news, which you should stop doing. Don't watch any television news. It's toxic for you. Don't watch it. Do something else at that time. It's terrible. You get addicted to it. It shapes your thoughts and feelings, and it's toxic. Find something else. Read the news a little bit. Spend about 20 minutes a day on news, I say. No more. No more than that. You do have to know what's going on in the world, so 20, 30 minutes. That's all I would do. But all day long, most people hear about how their actions and thoughts are pretty irrelevant. We just hear about the actions and thoughts of people who are supposed to matter. Elected officials, celebrities, things like that. How refreshing to get a passionate close to a speech about how important their actions and thoughts are. How refreshing to them. How persuasive. How much will that make them want to do or think or feel the way you'd like them to do or think or feel at the end of the speech? Think about that. Think about the power of community. We're all in this together. We are Queens. We are Flushing. Here's what we stand for. This kind of thing is hard to do these days because, people don't think in terms of the local. People think only in terms of the national when it comes to politics. But a good orator could make that happen and say, we are the kind of neighborhood that doesn't stand for this. Or we are the kind of college campus that doesn't stand for this. This is against our values. This is against our mission. We should be so angry that this is being permitted to happen and our names are on it. What are we going to do about it? So, suggestions for anger and choice. A iteration. of the evidence and proof. Remember, I showed you why this is true. I showed you the numbers. I showed you the testimony from the top experts in the field. I showed you how quickly this technology is developing. And I've also showed you how little preparation we've done to prepare ourselves for welcoming another intelligent creature into the earth. That's like for the AI speech. So this would be a good place to do that. But suggestions for action and choice, that's an important one. Like if they're inspired, they're going to want to do something. Don't lose that energy. Have them go do something. Tell them to sign up for something. Tell them to call a number. Tell them to email somebody. Tell them to post something on social media. Tell them to read a book or read an article or read a website. Tell them to, I don't know, come to a club meeting. There's so many things that you could have them do at this point. Most of the time, though, in the ancient world, it was like, please vote innocent. Please acquit my client. And that would be the pathway to do that in the pure oration for a lawyer would be the closing statement where they ask for an acquittal. And they show why an acquittal is the only logical conclusion based on what the prosecution presented. There's a real art to that, actually. So there you go. That's it. That's the order they talk about in the book. The book has some more details about this. You might want to read the chapter and supplement the chapter with all of these lectures because the chapter will have a lot of really good stuff in it as well. I hope you liked this video. It's a little bit longer than I'd like it to be, but please give me feedback in Discord on these videos and what you think about them. Whether you think they're decent or what you'd like to see. I'm happy to make custom videos for you on any question you have, and really looking forward to watching the speeches improve over the term. We're off to a really great start. Just apply some of these things, read the book, apply the things I'm talking about in these lectures, and we are all going to be world-transforming orators before we know it. Probably not in December, but before we know it, if we keep practicing.